Okay, and welcome back to the fifth Okami classical Japanese analysis video. Today we are going to be going over what the Tsuta no Hanagami says to you when he gives you this special power that allows you to draw a line from yourself to certain other specific plant materials, and it makes a little vine and it pulls you there, or sometimes I think it might pull things to you. But anyway, it's a special power that you get from the last of the three monkey gods, the last of the three Hanagami, the last of the three flower gods as they're known as. So, if you enjoy Okami, or you like classical Japanese, or you like ancient Japanese literature and storytelling, or you did and all of that good stuff, please don't forget to like the video. Please subscribe to the channel because there are plenty of other celestial brushstroke techniques videos that we have to get through. Again, I think this is 5 of 13, possibly even more. And there are also going to be in the future other instances in video games where we discuss classical Japanese and why it's cool, etc., etc. Okay, and if you've already seen the previous videos and you've seen the preamble already, please go ahead and skip to the next little bit here. But for you guys who are new here, I want to discuss with you what exactly is classical Japanese. Classical Japanese is the Japanese that was spoken roughly 1,000 years ago by the aristocracy who lived in the capital of Heian, which is now modern Kyoto. Now, the reason why this is cool is because these people were basically the ones who laid the foundations for traditional Japanese culture. They were the ones who came up with some of the most significant pieces of literature in Japanese history, i.e. the Tale of Genji, the Tale of the Heike, Makara no Soshi. They also came up with what is probably considered the most prestigious and elegant form of the Japanese language, which is waka poetry. Well, they didn't come up with it. They made some of the single most important poetry that was ever in Japanese history. And because of that, they had a massive influence over the entirety of the country. A long time ago, Japan actually had a lot of different dialects that were really not necessarily mutually intelligible, that were hard for each other to understand. So a lot of times what they did is they would just adopt this aristocratic, this very regal and dignified way of speaking, this very poetic way of speaking, and they adapted it all over the country so everybody could kind of understand what each other was saying. And because of all of that, when you have games and anime and you have a character that you want to give a certain sense of ancient wisdom and dignity and power, a lot of times you have gods or something. They will have these characters speak in classical or sometimes quasi-classical Japanese because it carries, again, this aura about it of wisdom and power and regality. And I thought that stuff was really cool, and I wanted to know more about the origins of Japanese culture, where it comes from and how it works and why it's cool. And so I embarked many years ago on trying to learn classical Japanese so I could read some of these ancient texts and understand what they were saying and understand them on a deeper level. However, what I'm trying to do now is I am trying to make it a little bit easier for some of you guys who may be embarking on the same journey, so you don't have to suffer as much as I did, and just make things accessible to you guys so you can all become at-home personal scholars yourselves. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's actually get into the actual linguistic analysis of what the Tsuta no Hanagami says to you, and just get to it, okay? We are going to do the little bit of the intro so you can see the funny monkey. The funny monkey. Comes tumbling down. And there's the other two monkeys. Haha, that was very silly. I wonder if he actually caught. I guess he caught it because he's got it there. By the way, this time I don't actually have any commentary on the instrument that he's using because as far as I'm aware, symbols like that in gagaku and ancient Japanese Heian period court music, I don't really see them. They might have been there. I mean, because I'm no credentialed expert, right? And part of the reason why I do this is because I want an excuse to study because my knowledge is severely lacking. But as far as I'm aware, they really didn't do the symbols thing. Anyway, moving on. So the first thing I want to go over is this guy's name, Tsuta no Hanagami, okay? Which we'll see later. But Tsuta means a vine. Big tendril, leafy plant-like tendril, right? Tsuta. And then we have this no, which this is one way to write no. There's another way of writing no that we will see. But this no basically just means of. And I'll explain how it works in just a little bit. And then we have Hanagami, okay? Hana means flower. Gami comes from kami, which means God. So the vine of flower god, okay? And again, this no works basically like our English of. However, whenever you do that, in Japanese, they have the order of the words that come before and after it reversed. So for example, this guy's name is Tsuta no Hanagami, which is vine of flower god, okay? However, in order for it to actually translate properly, we have to flip Hanagami and Tsuta around. So instead of Tsuta no Hanagami, vine of flower god, which gives you the image of like there's a vine and it is from the flower god. No. We have to flip it around. So we have the flower god of vine, okay? Flower god of the vine. The flower god of vines, that kind of a thing. So he is a flower god, but he is the vine flower god specifically is what it's saying here. So hopefully that no makes sense. Again, we're going to see it a little bit later, so remember that. And then we get on to the actual speech that he has. Oh, okay? That's what these two characters right here are. It's just oh, which is just an elongated, it's like an oh, okay? Basically all this is this isn't really a word per se, it's a sound. It's an ah, well, I see. If it isn't such and such, okay? So, oh, ho, ho. Maybe I'll throw that in there. Anyway, so we have o, and then we have the actual words, okay? Warera ga jibo is this first little bit, okay? First word, ware. Ware means I. It's the first person pronoun, I or me. And then we have this da on here, and da functions in this instance like a pluralization, okay? It pluralizes. So I plural, I's, me's, okay? Multiple me, multiple I, which basically just takes it from singular first person and makes it plural first person, which is we or us, okay? So warera is us. And then we have ga. Ga is a possessive particle. Particles are important little bits in Japanese. I think we have them in English. Actually, I know we have them in English. But particles are very important in speaking Japanese in that they basically tell the listener / the reader what each word in the sentence does. We do that a lot of times with like word position, but they do it with particles. So theoretically in Japanese, you can have a sentence with all the words scattered about any which way in a sentence, but as long as it's paired with the correct particle, you know what each thing in the sentence is doing, what each word in the sentence is doing, and the function that it serves. So ga is possessive, meaning mine or mine, okay? So we go from ware, I, to warera, us, and then we have warera ga, which means our. And what is ours? What is this ours? Obviously, he's referring to our. He's referring to all of the other celestial brush gods, brush technique gods, okay? Our jibo, okay? Jibo is a Chinese loanword. Ji means something like compassionate, benevolent, loving. And then bo means mother. So jibo means our compassionate mother, our virtuous mother, our loving mother. So, o warera ga jibo. Oh, if it isn't our compassionate mother, Amaterasu Omikami, okay? Amaterasu is the name of the main character of Okami, which most of you probably know. But the interesting thing is Amaterasu Omikami in the traditional Japanese myths is the sun goddess and the head of the Japanese pantheon. She is the most important god. She's the most important goddess, but she's the most important of all of them. And it is said that she is the one who is the progenitor of the Yamato clan, and by extension, the Japanese emperors. The imperial line is technically descended from Amaterasu. And even the current emperor, Emperor Dewa, technically, I mean, you have to make a couple of caveats for like uncles and stuff, but basically he can trace his lineage, theoretically, all the way back to the sun goddess herself. It is an unbroken line that is continued. I think it's the longest running monarchy in world history. It's literally goes back like 2,000 years probably, or maybe just under 2,000 years. Anyway, Amaterasu is her name, okay? And it is made up of two parts. Ama, which means heavens, the sky, the heavens. And then terasu is a verb that means to shine another thing, to shine up, to brighten up, to make bright. So Amaterasu is basically that which makes bright, that which makes the heavens shine, which is the sun, which is why she's the sun goddess. And then she has the title O-Mi-Kami, okay? Now, technically, these two kanji here, this kanji you can read as O, which means great, big, superior is another way you can think of it. And then Kami means, like I said with Tsuta no Hanagami, Kami means God. So O-Kami means great God, superior God, wondrous God, right? Now, we do have this extra mi in the middle here, which technically there should be a kanji to cover that. And mi just is a very, very ancient Japanese way of making something very honorific. So Omikami means the great goddess Amaterasu. Now, an interesting thing here, because we got to go through the wordplay. The game itself, Okami, is written with these two kanji here. Okami, okay? Great God. And that is actually a play on of words, okay? Because there's another word in Japanese, Okami, that means wolf. Which, funnily enough, that is the form that Amaterasu takes in this game. Now, the thing that I should point out is that in the traditional mythology, Amaterasu Omikami, Amaterasu Okami, doesn't actually have any sort of association with wolves. They're not like her messengers or anything. She's not depicted as a wolf. She doesn't have anything to do with wolves at all. This is just a happenstance. This is just a cognate. And the developers of this game thought it would be a lot of fun to just make that little play on of words, because that's something that you do in Japanese a lot. And thus, they made Amaterasu a wolf. So if you go through the mythology and you're disappointed that you don't find anything about Amaterasu and wolves, there isn't anything there. But it was just fun. And who doesn't like wolves? I like wolves. I think they did a great job with this game. Anyways, moving on. Okay, then we have this next little bit, ware. Okay, ware is, like I said, it just means I singular. Ware wa. Okay, wa is the topic marker particle. Now, in modern Japanese, it basically just kind of functions as a subject marker. In classical Japanese, it had a little bit more of a distinguishing effect, I guess you could say. Basically, when you have wa, what it's referring to is it's saying this thing as opposed to the other things, okay? We're talking about this thing, but we're kind of contrasting it with whatever else is coming in the sentence or whatever else may have come before it. It's like, no, this thing specifically, like there are those other things and they're kind of included, but we're specifically talking about this in relation, in contrast to those other things. So ware wa, so I in particular, so I, hana sanshin, okay? Hana means flower. Again, we went over that. And then sanshin is actually Chinese loanwords, the Chinese pronunciation of the word three, which is san, and then shin is a Chinese pronunciation, well, the Sino-Japanese, because I think the Chinese actually say shen, but the Japanese say shin, okay? Sanshin means three gods, so the three flowers, the hana sanshin is the three flower gods, okay? And then we have another Chinese loanword, saigo. Sai means like the most, or the end, the ultimate, the penultimate, is that the right word? The ultimate. And then we have this kanji, go, which means last. So saigo literally means the final, the last one, or the one that comes the most behind. I guess go technically, ushiro, ato, means after or behind, right? So watashi no ushiro means behind me. But again, instead of the native Japanese ushiro, we have it with the Sino-Japanese pronunciation, go. So saigo literally means the most behind, the most in back. Which is the last. And then we have this no, which again functions as the of, right? Saigo no isshin. Now, this is a little bit difficult to translate directly over into English, but isshin, this means one, and then shin again means God. So here we have sanshin, which means three gods, and then isshin means one god, okay? So saigo no isshin, last of one god, okay? However, if we flip it around, it becomes one god of last. Which means, well, basically, actually, in this instance, I think it would be best to just keep it the way it is. Saigo no isshin is the last of the three flower gods, okay? I specifically, me, I specifically am the last of the three flower gods is this line up here. Tsuta no Hanagami, okay? That's his name, Tsuta no Hanagami, the flower god of the vine, nite soro, okay? Now, this little bit here, this ni, okay? Because ni in classical Japanese, it could be, there's like a billion different kinds of ni's, okay? This ni, I believe, is technically the connective / combination form of the verb nari. Nari means to be. It's classical Japanese to be. So, for example, I would say something like, ware, I, otoko, nari. I am a male. I am a man, okay? Amaterasu wa okami nari, okay? Amaterasu no omikami. Okami nari. Amaterasu is a wolf. Amaterasu is a great god. Tsuta no Hanagami wa saru nari. Tsuta no Hanagami is a monkey, okay? However, what we're doing is we are taking the nari and we're kind of shortening it, but what we're doing is we're making it into its combination form, okay? Its continuation form. The renyoke is what it's called in Japanese. And that allows us to stick other things on the end of it and combine it with other words, okay? So what we're doing is we're turning it into this continuation, this combination form, this soft combination form that again allows us to like merge it with other things, not make it distinct, but to merge it with things and make it one with other words. So we have ni, and then we have the connective particle te. So we've got a connection. We've got a soft connection that allows us to connect to this hard connection. And the hard connection makes things a little more distinct, and I guess in this instance, a little more emphatic, I think is the way that it works. Because it's like, we're combining it with this hard connection so that we can then say, boom, okay? It's boom, this is it. So, ni, te, so combination to be with a connective form, and then we have soro, okay? Soro is a very interesting word, because I don't actually remember what this kanji by itself means. I know it's in the modern Japanese word for like climate, kiko, okay, kiko. However, the word soro, I believe, comes from the root verb samurafu, okay, samurau. And some of you might be going, oh, that sounds like samurai, right? That's because it's similar. It's the same origin, because the original verb samurafu originally meant for an inferior to serve a superior, right? And then a samurahi was somebody who did that, was a servant. You could think of it that way. However, over time, the consonants that were attached to the u sounds, right? The u syllables, the sa, bu, da, fi, okay? Eventually, those consonant sounds eventually dwindled over time, and you were left with sa, u, da, u. And then when you have in ancient classical Japanese, you have and u next to each other, a lot of times those just kind of combined together and became an elongated o, okay? So, sambu-ra-hu became sa-u-ra-u, so-u-ro-u, so-ro, okay? Which again means to serve. And basically what happened is servants would, people on the lower social scale, when speaking to their superiors, they would say this all the time, that I do this, I'm here at your service, I'm at your service, I'm at your service. And eventually, this basically just kind of became like a thing you could stick on the end of verbs, or in this instance, it's actually what you would say to be, right? It is, I am such and such. You would say it this way because it's very humbling. You'd basically say at your service. Instead of saying, I am here, ware koko ni ari, okay? You would say, ware koko ni samburau. I am serving here. I am serving here. You're basically saying that my existence is for service. And so that's basically what Tsuta no Hanagami is doing here. He is basically humbling himself before Amaterasu o Mikami, the great goddess of heaven, right? The great sun goddess. So he says, Tsuta no Hanagami ni te soro. I am humbly at your service, the Tsuta no Hanagami, the flower god of the vine, which is the final god of the three flower gods, okay? Moving on. Okay. Now this little bit is important here. Harukeki mukashi ni, okay? So harukeki comes from the root adjective harukeshi, okay? And harukeshi means far away, way off in the distance, like really far away, okay? Now an interesting thing is harukeshi is what's called the ending form. If you were to say a sentence and end it with harukeshi, that's how you would end it, harukeshi. So for example, you would say something like Kano yama harukeshi. That mountain is far away. End, okay? End of the sentence. However, one of the things that you do with adjectives is you use them to modify and describe nouns, in which case you have the adjective and then you have the noun. So for example, if I say, Kano yama harukeshi, that mountain is far away, what I can say instead of that mountain is far away is the faraway mountain, okay? The faraway mountain is Takeshi, right? Is tall. Takash, that's not Takesh. It's not strong, it's not brave, it's tall. Anyway, however, when you do that, you have to take this adjective and turn it from the ending form harukeshi, which is kind of like the normal form, it's like the usual one, and you have to put it in the attributive form, the form specifically designed to give attributes to following nouns. So harukeshi becomes harukeki, okay? Harukeki yama. Kano harukeki yama. That mountain off in the distance wa takashi is tall. Kano harukeki yama wa Fujiyama nari. Okay, is that mountain off in the distance is Mount Fuji. So harukeki, which is the attributive form, and this is important. This is very important. Please remember this. Then we have mukashi. Okay, mukashi just means the past, the distant past. Well, I don't know how distant the distant past is, but it is in the past. So harukeki mukashi means the very distant past, a long time ago. And then we have ni. Now this ni is different from the previous ni that we saw because this ni is the prepositional particle. Now what the heck is a prepositional particle? Preposition basically is just it's the preposition, right? It's talking about positions and movement and stuff, positions, and it's adding information to that. So in English, our prepositions are in, an, on, at, to, by, next to. Those are all prepositions. Now in Japanese, they have one particle that basically sums all of that up, okay? And that is ni. So harukeki mukashi ni, distant past preposition, which distant past, in, okay? In the distant past is how you can translate this little bit here. In the distant past, omoto no futokoro, okay? Now again, if you've seen the previous videos, you know what omoto is, but I am going to explain it here, so my apologies. Omoto in this game it basically functions as a very honorific second person pronoun. So a very honorific you, your grace, your highness, your majesty kind of a thing. Your augustness. However, the meaning of it is really interesting because this first part here, o, is just an honorific thing. That's all it is. It just means honorific. However, then we have this kanji moto, which is very, very interesting concept, okay? Now, moto, the word itself, originally means something like, origin, foundation, the source of a thing, right? Basically, you can think of it as something rooted to the ground, something that's there that doesn't change, and it's from which other things spring, right? And there are two ways you can write that kanji. You can write it with moto, or you can write it with moto, okay? You can write it with either of these two kanji. However, this is written with a different kanji that means to forgive, or I think more appropriately, to allow, okay? And we don't see this in modern Japanese. If you see this kanji here, you will never, ever read it moto. Now, the reason why they did this, and I think this is what it is, okay? This is my assumption, so I might just be talking out of my butt and all the previous videos may actually be wrong, but I believe the reason why, right, is because if you have a noble person, somebody who's in charge, somebody who's high up on the social ladder, they have their moto, right? They have their base, they have their foundation, they have their origin from which they stay there. Because as a noble person, you don't work, right? You sit on your throne, basically. You sit in your area, in your sacred place, in your highfalutin place. And when somebody has a petition for you, they come to you and then they are allowed in your presence, right? They are allowed to come before you and make their petition. And so these two ideas kind of combined together over time, and eventually the origin, the place that the higher up person is also the place where you are allowed in. So that's why we have the dual meaning of it is the origin, is the foundation from which the noble person doesn't move, but you are also given permission to enter. And then the other thing to mention is that in classical Japanese, technically they did have a second person pronoun, which was nare. However, they didn't use it very often. And instead, they tried to be a little more, beat around the bush, and they would refer to people a lot either by their job title, or they would refer to them based on where they lived, the location that they lived. So like, miya means a palace. Tono means like an estate, a lordly house, I guess you could say. I don't know what the difference between a miya and a tono is. Maybe some of you guys can explain that in the comments if you know. But you would refer to people based on where they lived. This is the lord of the Nishinomiya, the lord of the West Palace, right? The West Palace, and you would say, oh, I'm going to speak to West Palace. Ware Nishinomiya to kataramu, okay? Is I'm going to speak to the West Palace, literally is what that means, but what I'm referring to is I'm going to go speak to the person who lives there, right? Because me directly referring to this person by name is considered a little too straightforward, a little too direct, and maybe a little too aggressive. So instead, I'm going to be very polite, and I'm going to beat around the bush and say, oh, I'm going to speak to the people who live, the man who lives, the lord who lives at such and such place. Omoto is kind of like that. Again, it's referring to space. It's referring to a place, not to like a person specifically. However, over time, when you kept doing that right, eventually it just kind of gradually became a very honorific second person pronoun. So basically, we're going to treat this like second person pronoun. You, honorific you, your majesty, your highness, okay? So we have omoto and then we have no. Now this no is a little bit different from the previous no's that we've seen in that this is possessive. So it's kind of like that ga that we just saw. It just means belonging to, okay? Of, or yeah, the things. So omoto no literally means your, okay? Your highnesses, your majesties, whatever. And what is your majesty's thing? It is the futokoro, okay? Again, this requires a little bit of an explanation. So in ancient Japan, or in traditional Japan, you wear a kimono, which is like a robe, right? You take it, you put it on, and then you got to kind of like, you got to cross the little clothing over, right? And then in order to keep the kimono together, you have to tie it with a belt-like thing called an obi, right? So that way it doesn't just and just expose all your bits, right? So what you do is you put the kimono on, you tie it there, and then what would happen is because you have this like belt, you have this obi tied here, right? You could take things, you could like open up your fold in here, and then you could stick things in here and then close it, and then that would be essentially like a pocket. That's where you could carry things. But the interesting thing is that put things close to your heart or to your bosom. That's a fun word, bosom. Anyway, you could put things here, and that kept it close to the center of your being. It kept it close to your heart. You kept important things here, right? That was called the futokoro. So futokoro kind of means pocket, but it's a pocket that's close to your heart. It's a pocket that's close to you. So it's this very poetic kind of idea that it's like it belongs to a person, but it's an important thing that's like a part of them. So omoto no futokoro, right, is your inner pocket, your heart, your bosom, which again is a little silly considering that Amaterasu is a goddess. But anyway, omoto no futokoro o, okay? O is a particle that denotes the object of a sentence. An object of a sentence is a thing that in the part of the sentence that receives whatever the action is. For example, a dog eats the food. In this instance, the object of the sentence is the food because the food is what is receiving the action of eats, okay? The action is eats, the subject is the dog, and then the food is the object, okay? In Japanese, they determine the object by this o, okay? So your futokoro, o, is the thing that's going to be receiving the action, and the action is idete, okay? Now, idete comes from the root verb izu, okay? Idu, okay? Which means to leave from, to go out from, to escape from, to leave, to go away from, I guess you could say. However, we go from izu into ide because that makes it that soft connective form, okay? Which again allows us to stick things on the end of it and make it basically one word. So basically we're having the exact same thing that happened with the nite earlier, is we're saying ide te. So we're having a soft connective so we can stick on a hard connection, okay? And I believe the hard connection, again, it compartmentalizes things a little bit more, but I think it also serves to put things in more of a chronological order. So it's like this thing happened, and then this thing happened. So again, we have this renyoke, we have this connective form, so we can stick the connective particle, the hard connective particle, te, onto it. And then we have hyakuyonen, which is Chinese loanwords, and just means 100, hyaku, 100. Yo means excessive or more than, and then nen means years. So 100 more years. So more than 100 years, okay? So harukeki mukashi ni, in the distant past, I left your bosom, I left your being, I left you, and it has been more than 100 years. Now, he's kind of letting this trail off. If you notice this line here, he's kind of letting it trail off, because normally you could put something at the end here like nariki or something like that, or naritsuru or something, you could have something that actually is the verb that says it has been, right? But he doesn't do that, because in classical Japanese, like in Japanese, but in classical Japanese especially, assumption is king, and letting things trail off and allowing things to be unsaid but mutually understood is a very poetic practice. So he's basically just saying, oh man, I left you more than 100 years. And then, you have this like wistful longing and thinking about it. And then he's like, anyway. So let's continue. So ware, I, we've been over that. Ima koso, okay? Ima just means now. I believe it's a noun. Yeah, ima. And then koso is an emphatic particle, okay? It kind of works like wa, but it's more emphatic. It's like wa, okay? Wa, yeah, that's right. So ima koso, so now, this time specifically, not tomorrow, not yesterday, not 5 minutes from now, but now. The focus is on now. It's like now, here we go, right? So ima koso shirayuki ni sakisoite, okay? Shirayuki is a verb that's a combination of two parts. Shira just means white, and yuki means snow. So white snow. Ima koso, so now, white snow, ni, this is prepositional ni, again, in the white snow. Ware ima koso shirayuki ni, so I, now, in the white snow, sakisoite, okay? I have a little bit of trouble understanding what exactly he's trying to say here, because this is a combination of two verbs, okay? The first verb, saki, comes from the verb saku, which means for flowers to bloom. A flower, saku, right? Sakura, saku, means the sakura bloom. However, we put it into that connective form, that soft connective form, right? That allows us to combine it with other words, in this case, another verb. So, saki, soite. Now, so means to like stick to, attach to, be a part of. And this is where I get a little confused because I'm not entirely sure what saki so is supposed to mean. Like, bloom and attached to, maybe he's saying that he's coming back to Amaterasu again. He is blooming and being attached to. Maybe you could think of it like when a flower blooms and you pick it and you can stick it on other things for like decorative purposes. Maybe that's what he's saying, is that he is blooming once again despite the cold. And I don't remember what happens when you find this guy, when you find this Tsuta no Hanagami, or where you get it. So maybe you can remind me in the comments, like, what's happening, what's going on in the actual game when you find him. Like, is he hiding in a tree? I don't remember what happens. But saki soite, so bloom and connect to, bloom and attach to. Because again, we go from saki sou means to attach to. Then we have it in this connective form once again, right? The soft connective form once again from saki sou to saki soi. And then we add the hard te, which again means and. These two connective forms, right, are soft and basically makes this all into one big thing. And then we add this hard te, this definitive compartmentalizing te. So I now I bloom and attach to you in the white snow. So he's like, it's a flower springing up out of the dead of winter, in the dead of winter. Okay. And then the final sentence is karetaru kugai o uruowasam. Okay. Karetaru comes from the root verb karu, which means to wither or to dry up. It's what happens when a flower dies, right? However, we go from karu to kare, which is the connective form, right? It's that same connective form that we've seen. And the reason why we have that connective form is so we can attach this taru on the end of it. Now, taru is an auxiliary verb. An auxiliary verb it's basically a verb, but it in and of itself doesn't really have any meaning. So like, for example, in English, we have the auxiliary verb can. Like if you just walk up to somebody and you say, I can, people are going to be like, you can what? What? There's got to be something more here. You can what? You can't just say I can with no other context, right? Just like, what do you mean I can? You can what? You can speak? I can see that. You can weird me out? Okay, yeah, you're doing that. But it doesn't have any meaning in and of itself, really. Taru, or it's, I guess, technically the ending form, the original, the normal form, I guess we can say, would be tari. But what tari serves as is it serves as like this thing happened and then is continuing in this state. It's like a continuation thing. You can think of it in English almost like a past tense, like a happened, or an ing, a happening. It is happened / happening. It's kind of both of those things. So kare, which again, karu means to wither, and then kare taru, kare tari is how you would normally say it if it was the ending form. Kare tari means like withered / withering. It means a thing that is withered and is continuing to in the state of being withered, right? However, what we are going to do, and this is where the attributive thing comes in again, we turn it from kare tari to kare taru because the ru makes it the attributive form, which it is now attributing the kugai, right? The kugai is a Chinese loan word that just means suffer, right? Suffering. And gai means like border or world. So the world of the suffer world. Suffer world is the world of suffering, the suffering world, okay? So kare taru is now modifying and describing the suffering world. So it is a suffering world that is withering, a withering world of suffering. Oh, that's pleasant. So karetaru kugai o. Again, there's that object o. So the withering world of suffering is receiving the action, which is uruo wasam. Okay, comes from the root verb uruo wasu. Now, uruo wasu means for a person, it's a transitive verb, meaning that one person does it to another thing as opposed to just it kind of happening of its own self, an intransitive verb. But uruo wasu means to dampen, to moisten, or in this case, I think the best way to think about it is to water. And because when you water plants, this idea that you water plants and then they spring up in glory and life and energy, right? And vitality, you are giving them warmth, you're giving them life, essentially. So uruo wasam, okay, comes from uruo wasu, which means to water. So water the withered, dry world of suffering. And then one other thing that I might mention is this is a very poetic way of saying that, because you can say uruo wasu, my sleeves, right? Or uruo wasu is one of the things that they say when the nobility would cry, is that they would shed tears and they would dampen / wetten like their sleeves, because they would use their sleeves to dry their tears, right? Or they would dampen the floor or whatever when they wept. And so it's this very beautiful, this very moving, stirring, emotionally impactful way of just saying to put water on something, to make something wet. I won't make any jokes. Anyways, so uruo wasam. So we go from uruo wasu, okay, which is the ending form, is the normal form, right? And then we put it into the uruo wasa. And this is known in Japanese as the mizenke, but in English we could call it the not yet form, the not yet done form, the not yet happened form. And the reason why we do this is because we add this on the end, and comes from mu, okay? Mu is the original way, and then just the u faded with time and became So uruo wasa mu, uruo wasa And what this does, when you have a mu attached to the not yet form, meaning that it's, it hasn't been completed yet, hasn't happened yet, that expresses volition or intention. It also expresses a little doubt or uncertainty, but in this instance, it's more uncertain. Means like I'm going to do this, but instead of me just doing it because like I breathe, right? Like ikisu is what you can say in classical Japanese, is like I breathe, but I don't like intentionally think about breathing, or I can say like ware yume miru, which means like I see, I dream, I have a dream. I don't intend for that to happen. It just happens. I mean, I do it, okay? But I don't intend. That's not my intention. I'm not actively trying to do that. When you make something this amu, okay, this uruo wasamu, it's not like he's just watering the dried earth because it's just what he does. He is actively and purposefully doing this. That is his intention, okay? So he is basically saying that he is going to shed rejuvenating waters all over the dried, poetically saying this world, this dried, withered world of suffering, okay? And I believe that's the end of the bit. Yep. Okay, so let's go back, recap. Monkeys. Okay, so, our compassionate mother, great goddess, heaven shining. I, in particular, I am the final god of the 3 flower gods, Tsuta no Hanagami. Yeah. Actually, I, the final god of the 3 flower gods, am Tsuta no Hanagami. Humbly, at your service, kind of a thing. I am Tsuta no Hanagami, the final god of the 3 flower gods. In the distant past, I left your being, I left your person, I left you, I left your core, the core to your being, and it has been over 100 years. But now, I, in the white snow, in the dead of winter, in the white snow, bloom and come back to you, attach to you. And I will water the dried, withered world of suffering. Okay? And then, he transforms into a little, and that means Tsuta, that means vine. Okay, so hopefully this one ends up being a little bit shorter, but that's basically it. That's the explanations. Got no other really cultural commentary to add to that, so if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel, because again, this is only like 5 out of 13 of these other Okami videos that I'll be doing, that I'll be going over all of the celestial brushstroke gods and what they talk to you, what they say to you, because they speak to Amaterasu in classical Japanese. And again, I do plan on doing other games in the future, and as more things come out, I also am considering doing anime, although depending on how difficult it might be to get some things for anime. But I would love to do anime, let's just say that, because there are some really cool instances in anime that I think deserve to have some analysis. And don't forget to share with everybody who you think might be mildly interested in it, because that's the best way to grow the channel, and that would be wonderful. And yeah, you know, again, I have nothing else really to say. If you've been watching all the way up to the end here, I thank you sincerely. Ito katajike no, actually, hold on, because I was reading the Tale of Genji the other day, and I realized that maybe katajike nashi isn't the right word to use. Maybe I should say ureshi or yorokobu, okay? Because apparently that's how they would say it. They just, instead of expressing something like thanks, they would just say when somebody did something nice to you, you just said, oh, wow, that makes me really, really happy. So maybe what I should say is like, ito ureshiu koso habere kere, or ito yo koso yorokobi habere, or something like that. You know, I don't know. Maybe I'll think about that. Maybe I'll have to change it up so it's a little bit more accurate. Anyways, regardless, thank you so much. We'll see you later. Have a good one, guys.